everyone, and welcome to Emotional Grit, the podcast where you can learn about the power of perspective and the science that fuels us. I'm your host, Jennifer Fernjack, and in today's episode, I have the honor of Sharon Tiraschi. She has worked with horses for over 20 years, and she has firsthand stories of ways that she's noticed that they could actually help people from a therapeutic perspective. It's pretty interesting, whether it's traumatic brain injuries or speech impediments or anything from multiple sclerosis to people with Down syndrome or autism. The stories are nothing short of amazing how horses could actually help people. So please feel free to like and subscribe on YouTube at my channel called Emotional Grit to get this episode and others. So Sharon, let's go ahead and get started. So how did you fall in love with horses? Did you happen to have them at your home growing up, or how did you get exposure to them?
Oh, well, I actually grew up partially in England, and I went to a summer school when I was about 7. So summer school over there is very extracurricular, not academic. And I did pony camp essentially. And from that week, I never left the stables. So I volunteered as a kid, and I would take riding lessons and then help with the horse care. And then eventually I got my own horse. So
Nice. So as far as like your profession goes, how did you happen to get involved with horses after you graduated? Were you just like, you know what, I can't get
yeah,
enough of them. I want to do this for a living.
yeah. So it was actually a friend of mine introduced me to a therapeutic riding program in Southern California that needed volunteers. So I started volunteering there on the weekends, and then they needed an instructor. So I went and I got my certification and started instructing for them, and then just avalanched into much bigger roles. But yeah, that's where I got started.
So as far as the therapy programs go, there's some confusion out there in terms of the names of the different programs. I've read about everything from hippotherapy to equine therapy to equine assisted procedures and things like that, or activities. So could you please shed some light on what the difference is in the vernacular as it relates to horses?
Yeah, so it's something that's always evolving as more kind of disciplines come in and more
Mhm.
people and professionals start using horses and incorporating them into their work. But essentially, there's a couple of umbrella terms. Equine therapy is a very common one. What that typically will refer to is when you have a professional, such as a physical therapist, a counselor, an occupational therapist, a speech language pathologist. They're all incorporating the horse into their treatment plans as a modality. So whether they're using the horse's movement as a treatment tool, or the interaction with the horse, or even just the environment that the horse lives in,
Mhm.
they're building that into the client's treatment plan. Um,
This is
Another
fascinating.
umbrella, it really is, it can be complicated too. But another umbrella term that goes over everything from the therapy and the recreation is equine assisted services. That's all inclusive. And then you have the recreational non-therapy side, which I would say the most common field in that is adaptive or therapeutic riding. So that's where the focus is on learning to ride and learning horsemanship, much like you could do adaptive skiing or adaptive swimming. And then there's some other recreational programs as well that fall under that side of the industry.
What would be an example of someone from an adaptive program perspective who could be helped in just kind of different ways that they interact with the horses?
Yeah, individuals with all manner of disabilities can participate, and they can learn how to ride. They can learn how to work with the horse on the ground, like grooming. They can do obstacle courses on the ground, learn about how to care for horses. Um, when they're riding, we can pick different disciplines and different, such as dressage or trail riding, and really focus in any area that they would want to.
So would this be perhaps for people who maybe got in a car accident, or perhaps they were in combat? Maybe someone came back who was serving overseas, and now they perhaps have an arm or a leg that's missing.
Yes.
Just scenarios like that.
Yes, absolutely. So it could be your veterans or active military. There's a lot of programs out there for those populations. People who've been in accidents and have injuries, whether it's short term or long term. From those accidents, and then also people who maybe have diagnoses such as Down syndrome or autism, cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis. There's lots out there that working with horses, riding horses, we can really create a therapeutic output for.
I was going to say, how does that work? Because they can help people by interacting with them physically. And of course, there's the mental and the emotional components as well, whether it's
Mhm.
giving someone confidence or perhaps giving someone a sense of responsibility or normalcy or things like that. But I
Yeah,
am wondering about the actual ways that the horse physically can help someone. So let's
yeah.
say, for example, somebody with autism. What would be an example of
Mhm.
that?
So when we ride, the movement of the horse is three-dimensional. So first of all, it actually is the same as the human gait. So being on a horse, if let's say we have a client who isn't able to walk with a normal gait, being on the horse's movement can facilitate the pelvis to feel like it's actually moving
Okay.
typically. And so that can carry over off the horse. And then additionally, when riding, you're getting sensory input from the horse. So whether it's their stride, how the hoof hits the ground, it travels up through the horse into the body. And we see people benefit from just organization of systems. So the vestibular system, the sensory system, those can all improve significantly just with that feedback from the horse's movement.
So is the thought that because someone's riding the horse, to your point, the actual gait of the horse, whether it's a normal one or a fast one or a slow one, whatever it is, the human who's on that horse can then physically, to your point, have it go through their pelvis and then up their body. And it's also has the potential to affect the brain as far as how the person is thinking or just kind of how they're, I guess is it the neurochemistry as far as how that's working behind the scenes?
Yeah, so it totally affects the neural pathways as the body feels that feedback. It goes up to the brain. The brain gets all that information and then is able to start to organize itself to help with whatever the challenge is. Whether it's producing speech, sometimes I've seen lots of improvements in speech production, improving posture, improving the ability to follow directions, being more attentive, and then other things like if they have too much arousal, the horse can calm them down. If they don't have enough arousal, the horse can kind of bring them up a level and get them more attentive and participating in their environment. So it's really quite fascinating, and as professionals in the industry, you choose the horse based on what the goals are for the client. So we have to understand the horse's movement in order to choose the right horse with the right stride and the right sensory feedback to help the client.
Wow. So when you mentioned the idea of speech, I would imagine this is probably anything from people who are nonverbal to perhaps someone who has a stuttering problem, or perhaps they stammer, or something to that effect. I would think even perhaps people with aphasia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is
Mhm.
the condition that Bruce Willis has, as far as not being able to articulate perhaps what he's thinking. I don't fully understand it,
Yeah,
but I know a neighbor of mine had a stroke and now has aphasia and sometimes has a hard time actually articulating, what she's thinking.
yeah.
But are there perhaps some stories you could share, whether it's someone who has been nonverbal or someone who stutters, or just different ways that a horse could actually help them?
Yeah, actually, when I first started working in this industry, I had a client, a little boy, and he was nonverbal. And so one of the things we were working on with him was, well, he couldn't vocalize to the horse, walk on or go. So we were teaching him gestures. So we were trying to teach him a sign for go. And we also worked on having him just reach out and touch the horse as another option for go, let's walk on. And just, it was a few lessons in after he'd started riding with us at the program. And then his dad let us know the next week that on their drive home, took about 30 minutes, but he actually said, go. And so
Wow.
it was pretty crazy. It took him that long from his lesson to be able to produce the sound, but to
Mhm.
go from nonverbal to actually saying a coherent word was, I mean, honestly miraculous.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and are you by chance familiar with that song that's called Old Town Road or Old Town Row? It came out
Yes.
during the pandemic, and it was oh gosh, I can't think. It's a country singer matched up with a rap singer,
Mhm.
and now I can't think of their names now. But
I know.
anyway,
I know the song now. Yeah.
yes. So during the pandemic, I believe there was a story here in the Twin Cities where a mother was at home with her little boy who was normally nonverbal, and all of a sudden he began saying some of the lyrics of the song. Like the song, it really resonated with him. Yeah. So if you Google it, Old Town Road, and helped boy speak or something to that effect, it's interesting how music can actually affect people physically as well.
Yeah.
So especially if the
Absolutely.
song resonates with somebody.
Yes.
But I also know that a number of years ago, I saw that movie, The King's Speech, where
Mhm.
Colin Firth plays the King of England and how he has a stuttering problem, and how when somebody plays music for him, if he would actually sing to that music, he wouldn't stutter when he would sing. It's a different part of your brain than what you would use for
Yeah.
speaking. And so it's so fascinating how these outside stimuli, can actually affect people. In
Yeah.
this case, obviously, it would be horses. So I'm just wondering for people who stutter, would it be something where it's similar maybe to the nonverbal scenario where by being able to ride the horse, again, it's physically moving the body and having some kind of a certain rhythm, and the actual chemistry then comes into play and can help people.
Yes, absolutely. And there's lots of different reasons why it could help. But yes, getting the movement, and rhythm is a word I was going to use. It's that rhythmic feedback is really important for the body and the brain to be able to have something safe and predictable. And so that's really helpful when it comes to helping organize. Yeah, so those neural pathways, again, helping the brain make new neural pathways, route around old
Yeah.
neural pathways. Um, that's where it all happens.
Wow. So, in addition to helping people who have disabilities, it's interesting how actually going out to where the horses are can also help their caregivers. So I know you
Yeah.
and I had talked about this a little bit before the interview today. And so could you share some examples of just kind of what this helps or how it helps caregivers as well, whether it's somebody's parent or their spouse, or maybe it's an adult child helping their parent, just ways that this can help them as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we think about it, normally caregivers, they might be transporting, their family member around to hospitals or clinics or sterile environments. Whereas when you get involved in these equine programs, you're coming out to a ranch, you're coming out to green space, to nature. And then just being around the horses, they have a very calming presence in and of
Hmm.
themselves. You don't even have to interact with them. They could just be very calming. So some programs out there will actually create programs for caregivers. Other times, just being at the facility, being able to take a walk on the trail, or like I said, go visit with the horses is just very calming. It's normal, it's not the sterile clinic environment. It's peaceful. So it's often just very healing in and of itself. And caregivers can get a little me time
Yeah.
and a little break, you know, while their family member, or friend or whoever it is in their therapy without being in the therapy.
Right. Right. I'm picturing birds singing and maybe a light breeze or something as people
Yeah,
are out and instead of hearing the traffic of a big city and just kind of the hustle and what have you of everything, it's just being able to enjoy nature, to your
yeah,
point, which is pretty special.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, so is this idea of horses being able to have a physical and emotional and mental effect on people kind of a new thing, or has this been around for a while? And or is it kind of a more in the U.S. or is it kind of a global phenomenon as well? Or how big is this? And maybe I'm just now hearing of it, and maybe everybody else knows about it until I did maybe a couple weeks ago.
No, I don't. It's funny. There's records going back to Xenophon of him using horses for sort of a physical therapy parallel, all the way back then. But bringing it to modern day, I would say it was like around the 1950s and 60s is when people started to formalize it, and recognize that horseback riding had, firstly, physical benefits as where it started. And then this is definitely something that's around the world, from China to Australia to, the UK and over here, it's all over and it's growing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you think back to all the different scenarios over the years where you've actually seen horses help people, is there a particular story that stands out to you as far as whether it was either with the person with a disability or perhaps their caregiver or both, or just some kind of a scenario that stands out to you that comes to mind?
Yes. I mean, probably a number of scenarios,
Yeah.
but the one that really jumps to mind is actually a good friend of mine. I taught her daughter for a while. And when she was born and when she was younger, all of her doctors, all of her therapists told them she won't walk, she won't talk, she won't be able to do anything for herself. She'll need full care round the clock. And her mom said, no, that's not how it's going to be. And found out about horseback riding and enrolled her in a hippotherapy program. Well, that's where she said her first word was as soon as she got on the horse for the first time. She actually produced speech.
Wow.
And then when I was teaching her, she was able to ride independently at the walk and the trot. And then she had a horse at home that she was able to barrel race on. So this is a kid that went from she's never going to be able to do anything, everything will have
Yeah.
to be done for her, to through horses, riding independently, talking, doing chores around the barn, you know, just doing as
Wow.
much as she can within her ability, but way beyond what anybody ever thought she could do.
Wow. What a great way to give people just a sense of hope. I mean, there are no guarantees in life, but just to have a sense of hope can definitely
Yeah.
help people in whatever their circumstances. So that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
But so as far as your business that you currently own, could you please tell people about that and how you interact with horses and what you do for them, not just people, but also for the horses themselves?
Yeah. So my business is Kindred Spirit Equine Services, and I train horses, but from a holistic perspective. And so I'm often helping people with work on the ground and with problem solving and troubleshooting, like behavioral issues. But one thing that's really important to me, because I also do equine body work and then saddle, bit, and bridle fitting, is supporting these therapy programs, because they're generally nonprofits and can't always afford, the best care for the horses. They do everything they can, but it's really important for me to give back to the horses and to the programs. And so I support local programs by doing body work for the horses, and by helping them with making sure they have proper fitting tack that the horse can be comfortable in and that the riders can be comfortable in.
Nice. So for people who want to know more about your company, what is the website or how could they actually look up more information on it?
Yeah, so my website is kindredspirites.com. And that's a great way. I have a whole page about myself if people want to know more about me. So that's where they could look for me and to contact me if they have questions or anything like that.
Okay. So I know you grew up with horses before even getting into the industry. So it's been over 30 years as far as your exposure to them. What
Yeah.
would you say that horses have done for you?
Mhm. Um, Honestly, they've helped me pursue my passion rather than staying in a box of, social norms. Well, you go to high school and you go to college and then you do this and that and the other thing and you work the 9 to 5 and all of that. And I did that for a short period and I was like, miserable. And having the opportunity to then turn my hobby and my passion into my career has been huge and life changing for me. So, doing all that learning as a child and growing up around horses really pushed me to be able to go, you know what, I want something different for myself. This is the path I'm going to take, and I'm going to help horses as they help humans.
Mhm. Good call. What would you say one of the biggest misconceptions is about horses?
That's a good question. I think a big misconception about horses for people who don't have exposure to them would be potentially that they could be dangerous, or they might bite you or kick you and that type of thing. And really that's not in the horse's nature. Horses are very calm, peaceful, personable. They're curious, they're playful, they want to be around humans, and if humans are kind to them, then they're just amazing to be around. And they certainly don't plan or try to be mean. People get into situations like being bitten by a horse. It's just an accident usually.
Right. Give them some credit. Yeah, but so is there anything that I haven't asked today that I should be? Anything that comes to mind, whether it's for the hippotherapy or perhaps just any kind of equine assistance programs, anything in general that you want to call out for the audience?
Yeah, there's just a couple of things that I thought about there. So if people are interested in finding a program to participate in, PATH International is a really good organization to go to. They accredit centers and instructors. So there you can find a center near you.
So
Um,
it's literally just PATH International, PATH
Yeah,
International. Okay.
PATHINTL.org is the website.
Okay.
So that's a great resource if people are looking for programs. And then also, you don't have to necessarily be a participant to benefit. So most of these programs, as I mentioned earlier, are nonprofits. And so they rely on volunteers. And so that's another way just the general public can get involved with, helping the horses, helping the clients, giving back, and also getting a mutual benefit of being around the horses, being in the green spaces, being in natural environments. So it's really therapeutic for volunteers too.
Makes sense. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it, as does the audience. So, and to the audience, thank you for being here today as well. And again, the YouTube channel is Emotional Grit. Feel free to like and subscribe and see additional episodes as well. All right. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.